create and deploy virtual machines and VApps. All right, we're almost at the halfway point in this series, and we're finally getting around to where we're actually going to get to start working with virtual machines. You know, before you ever really probably dug into vCenter, you probably thought that working with virtual machines would have been one of the first things that you could probably be, administering. But as you've learned thus far, you've got to really set up that infrastructure first before you ever get around to the point where you begin creating and working with those VMs. This is the first in a series of 2 nuggets where we're going to talk about the whole process of working with VMs, and this is kind of the introductory part, really how to create a virtual machine, how to create a VApp, and just kind of really get you familiarized with just some of the basic settings associated with VMs and VApps, and also to understand really what the differences are between a VM and a VApp. Now, one of the things you have to be aware of whenever you're taking a look at building new virtual machines is this whole notion up here of the virtual machine hardware version. And this is important because there are actually a number of different hardware versions that are available for virtual machines today. And if you don't keep them relatively straight in your mind, you may find out that you've created virtual machines with the wrong versions. Or if you've had an environment that has evolved over time from VMware version 3 to version 4 to version 5, well, you got to pay attention to those hardware versions because different versions have different capabilities. What I'm looking at here is a knowledge base article from VMware's website titled just simply Virtual Machine Hardware Versions. And whereas this particular knowledge base article doesn't say much about what's in each version, what it does is it tells you what those different versions are. And you can see here that ESX version 2 was hardware version 3, and then ESX version 3 was 4, and 4 was 7 for some odd reason, and 5 was 8. So these are the 4 numbers associated with ESX that you have to be aware of: 3, 4, 7, and 8. And for most of us, the only 2 that we're really going to have to worry about are version 7 and 8, because these days most of our ESX versions are at version 4 and version 5. So be conscious of these 2 hardware versions because they can be important for you to ensure that the virtual machines you have can support the features that you want. I will show you here another knowledge base article. This one is called Virtual Machine Memory Limits and Hardware Versions. And this just gives you an idea for ESX between version 7 and 8, which is ESX version 4 and 5, some of the differences in the available memory that you can assign to the virtual machines that you might have. You'll notice here in version 7 you can assign virtual machines up to 255 gigabytes, or a very, very large, over 1,000 gigabytes with hardware version 8. Now, hardware version 8 also includes some other capabilities as well. It includes 32-way virtual SMP, so you can have virtual machines, very, very large virtual machines of up to 32 virtual CPUs. I mentioned here the terabyte of virtual machine RAM, which is important. There's now software support in version 8 for 3D graphics to run atop Windows Aero. ESX version 5 supports non-hardware accelerated 3D graphics, so you can run Windows Aero and some basic 3D applications inside of virtual machines, and this may be useful for you, particularly as you start thinking about desktop virtualization. Version 8 also includes USB 3.0 device support and the UEFI virtual BIOS if you need to use the unified extended firmware interface for your BIOS. So these are some of the just basic improvements that you get once you make that leap from version 7 to version 8. If you go from ESX version 4 and you migrate to version 5, as you'll find out when we talk about upgrading in a later nugget, upgrading those virtual machines and their hardware version becomes important as well. Now, with this in mind, however, there are a number of topics that we really want to talk about and kind of click through in this nugget, and they're all fairly important. I want to punt for just a minute on this discussion about VApps and when you should convert virtual machines to VApps, because I need to kind of explain what a VApp is first. But what I do want to do are some kind of basic introductory tasks associated with creating virtual machines, just the notion of what the VMware tools and how you might install them, ultimately create and work with those VApps as well, and then I want to spend a minute